Thanks for joining in on my home office studio where we produce the Pursue Your Financial Freedom podcast. And I greatly appreciate you joining in. Today, we're going to talk about, as it says here, reaching over the computer, when can I retire? Even if I'm in like 20s and 30s, talking about that and the basics of financial planning for you guys. You know, what does it look like? What do you need to be aware of as you step out in the real world away from mom and dad and that type of stuff? Because when I was in high school, college, the only planning instruction I really received was from my parents. There wasn't really a class that got me prepared for the real world once I stepped out. Fortunately, I studied finance. I took a huge interest in the stock market back then and developed into a financial planner, got my certified financial planning designation. But for you guys, you know, in your 20s and 30s, if you're just getting started, I want to make sure we give you something, a podcast here that really is a tool that you can use that'll hopefully give you some information that will help you pursue the lifestyle that you want sooner than later. And if you're already there, help you preserve it, whatever it may be. But I think it's important you take a look at things here, and hopefully this will help you out. So we're going to go over a lot of different things here. We're going to talk about a hypothetical client so you can kind of get a vision of somebody in their 20s, what they're looking at from a planning standpoint. If I buy a house, you know, how much can I afford? And then as you start to have maybe children, and then your kids go to school, and then you're getting into that retirement phase, what are the things you have to think about budget-wise, income-wise, estate-wise, all to help you, again, pursue the lifestyle you want sooner than later. So, I mean, you could be somebody that just wants to be tiny house, big living. You hear that. You hear the FIRE movement, FIRE, financially independent, retire early. Or it could be just your traditional saving till you're 65 or whatever, and then trying to retire on your assets you've built up for the remaining of your life expectancy. So we're going to go into that. But first, I appreciate you joining. If you've never subscribed before and this is your first time, please hit the subscribe button if you like what you're seeing, and then give me a big thumbs up on any of the videos you watch, especially you, the young crew out there. There's a one you really need to take a look at. I put out $50,000 potential student loan debt cancellation. So I put this out. It's very interesting. Check it out on the YouTube channel if you want. So at the end of this, we're going to show you how you can get some complimentary planning as well as access to this software I'm going to show you, which I believe is the best software that I've ever used. I've been in this business almost 30 years, as I was saying, and it is fantastic. And I'm going to show you that, how you can get access to use it. And then we're also going to give you some tips on some potential growth investment ideas down the road. No guarantees or anything, but some things maybe you haven't ever seen before as you get going here in your financial planning, financial planning endeavors. So let's get into this. I'm going to pull up the client here, the hypothetical, so you can kind of see what we're talking about. And then I'm going to go through what I call the financial house. It's an analogy using idea where you have to have your foundation set from a planning standpoint, just like a house, to build that solid house. And I'll talk through the steps of some financial planning with that. And then we'll relate all that to this hypothetical client and what they need to do. So again, appreciate you sticking around on this. So here is the client we're looking at. I call it Mr. and Mrs. Just Getting Started. I need to cut to this so you can see it. That would be good. So Mr. and Mrs. Just Getting Started. This is their balance sheet. They're 25 years old. They just got married. So they've been out of college a little bit, and they've built up some assets on their own as single folks. And now they're trying to combine everything together, which I would advise and you usually do this from a counseling standpoint before you get married, and this would be a great tool to use for this, is everybody gets everything on the board, what you have, assets, meaning what you own, debts, student loan, car loans, whatever. put it all on here, see what you have, take an inventory, and then start planning. What's the best way to tackle this going forward? So this is their balance sheet. They've got $100,000 in assets. I'm not going to go into detail on everything on this yet. They have some IRAs, 401ks. These are things. 401k would be through your employer plan. If you're just getting started, you're typically going to be able to save into the retirement plan. They'll typically will be some kind of match. So you put in $1, maybe they're putting in 3 cents or something like that, 3%. So it just depends on the plan. Then there's IRAs, individual retirement accounts, you can add yourself above and beyond that. And we'll talk about that here in a second, how much you can put in. And there's a tax advantage potentially for you. Then they have their home. They purchased a home, $225,000 with a mortgage of about $180,000. The typical rule of thumb when you're going to go purchase a property, a home, is you want to try to keep your gross principal, interest, taxes, and insurance to about 28% of your gross monthly income or gross annual income. So let's just say you're making $100,000. So you take that times 28%, $28,000, to divide that out by 12, and that'll give you the number that you would need to try to stick to, where typical lenders are going to be able to be okay with lending you money and applying that to your house payment. So we'll look at theirs. And then there's another ratio above that, looking at your total debt to income, is a 36% that they like to make sure that you're kind of falling under. That means including your other debt payments, your car, your student loan, that type of stuff. So 36,000, divide that by 12, so you got about $3,000 a month between your house and your other debts that they like to try to keep you under, because you got to pay for everything else plus your taxes and all that, right? So this is the client. Let's look at their cash flow, their income real quick. So anything you see me doing here on this site, you will have access to do yourself and get into here, and you can change things around and all that. So that's all going to be available in here. And just to make sure you saw this, again, there's their mortgage down here in their house, if I'm in the way, my big fat head here. But anyway, if we go to the retirement tab here, this will tell you where their cash flow, meaning how much income they have coming in, and then how much income or expenses are going out. And that's a number 2 thing to really focus on when it comes to getting ready, is your budget. What are the expenses you're going to have to look at as you get out on your own and away from mom and dad? Because one of the funny jokes that is out there with people just getting out on their own is, it's about how I used to love Christmas and getting all the gifts. Why did I love that so much? Well, now they know. It's because they didn't have to pay for the gifts. Yeah, that's, hopefully you laughed. You need a little laughter, right? Worst case, I can make the thing laugh at me, so the machine, so that's good. Anyway, so yeah, you're going to have to start paying for things yourself, right? And it's no more, free lunch, if you will. So if you get in here and you go under cash flow, so retirement, hit cash flows, and we pull this up, it's going to show you their income versus expenses. I want to take a quick look at this so you can see it. And it's loading. Here we go. So you got your total income, $140,000 between the both of them right now that they're making. And you're going to see down here where it drops off down to like $92,000 right above my head. And we're showing a scenario where they eventually have kids, and one of the spouses decides they're going to go ahead and take off and raise, be at home with the kids and raise them to a certain point. Now, she could maybe work part-time from home. There's plenty of part-time jobs that you can do from home now, or just, hang out with the kids and do all that, which is basically, if one of the toughest jobs in the world, taking care of those kiddos and everything. It's a hard job. So anyway, $140,000 a year. Their expenses of $78,000. And that's going to be, all the other stuff. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then their tax payment. So this is going to be your federal, state, city, your local city taxes. It's also going to be your Social Security tax that comes out, a Medicare tax, which is going to be for your future retirement. Hopefully that will all still be there in some form or fashion. That eventually when you turn 62, you can start taking income that may be increased by the time you get there. 62 years of age for Social Security. 65 right now, 65 right now is Medicare, meaning that's your insurance, health insurance that you can get coming out. So that comes out of your check. And then the planned savings is how much you're putting away to save for future things, such as your retirement or maybe college education, that type of stuff for the kiddos down the road. But that's the stuff where you can get potential tax deductions off the top and reduce these tax payments. You put money into these deferred retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, you have that ability to potentially get the deduction. Now, there's also what's called a Roth 401k and a Roth IRA where you don't get any tax deduction up front, but you're putting in after-tax money, you've already paid tax on it, and it grows tax deferred and it comes out tax-free down the road as well. So that's another thing you can do. So that shows your total outflows. 125,000, and then their net flows of 14.8, meaning after what they brought in income, what they spent, what they saved, they netted $14,000. And eventually down here you can see it drops off where you're actually got a negative outflow, and that's where maybe they're not bringing in as much money because one spouse stopped working and they have to make that up and have money available for that, or she goes and works part-time, or he. So that's that situation. So that give you kind of a scenario. What we're going to do, we're going to look at some really cool things. You got to stick in here with me. I'll show you how this software, we can adjust little numbers. If you spend $50 less here, $100 there, what that can do to the projections of you retiring in the future down the road. So you'll get and you'll be able to manipulate this yourself when you're in here. But now I want to show you this, what I call the financial, pursuing your financial independence house, and then talk about what I was mentioning before. So one other quick thing you do have in here if you want to. So if you go to pursuefinancialfreedom.com and you click on complimentary financial plan, which is up here, and this is where you can start to get that complimentary consultation that we can provide you up front. You can click on that, takes you to the actual, starts building this website out that I'm showing you right now. You can do that. But if you come down a little bit further in here, there's a budget brainstorm worksheet. There's many different categories in here. It'll automatically calculate things for you so you can get an idea what your budget is. You can bring that into the software, or you can do it right in the software as well in there. But then this is the main sheet I want to show you. This is really the basics of financial planning. Let me hit the F11 key to make this bigger so you can see it. So as I talked about before, you really need to have a solid foundation to build your financial plan on going forward, what you want to really accomplish, the lifestyle that you want. And just like a house, if you don't have a good foundation, no matter what you try to build on top of it, it could all come crumbling down. So we want to try and protect what you currently have and make that work long term. So here's a couple things that we want to look at on the foundation. And the foundation kind of creeps up in here too, but in case there is an emergency, and you're getting in, now you're in the new world, you're living out by yourself and that type of thing, make sure you have some type of backup emergency plan. If there's kind of a natural disaster, or you lose your job, or you're if you're disabled, things that you need to do to prepare for that. So first of all, losing your job. So this is kind of falls up here in 3 to 12 months emergency fund, and then emergencies down here is having, so if your expenses on a monthly basis are $3,000, right? You multiply that times 3, that's 9,000 you want to try to have saved up in an emergency savings checking account that you have access to if you need it. In today's world with COVID-19, I might argue a good 6 months, if not a year, in case we run through this again. I mean, I strongly believe we're going to get through this. Things will get back to pretty much normal, but we could certainly have it again, right? And you got people losing their jobs, and you're counting on the stimulus checks and all that, but maybe those don't come in the future. We don't know. So really try to build up your own emergency fund, especially it could be a house problem. Your furnace goes out, the air conditioning goes out, something wrong with your car. All this kind of stuff can happen. Maybe if you have pets, you got a pet surgery that comes up. There's so many different things that can pop up. If you don't have that emergency fund, that makes things very difficult. Then you may start to have to go into debt, reach into your retirement accounts, which you want to try to avoid at all costs, and that type of thing. So build that up. Additionally, if there is a natural disaster, like I don't know where you're watching this from, but whether it could be hurricanes, tornadoes. We had here in northern Cincinnati, Ohio area in the Midwest, even though we're not near the Gulf Coast, we had a situation where one of the hurricanes came up. I think it was in 2011, somewhere in there. And we had a situation where we had a huge windstorm, just literally took down power and everything. I think it was like 4 or 5 days we were out. You had a situation you didn't have hot water. You could have been a situation where you didn't have any water. If something happened to the water treatment facility, you can't pump things. So you really got to make sure that you have some basics in place. Food, backup food, and some water, jugs. But I would argue also to get something like this. This is a military grade. It's called Katadyn. They're one of the well-known water filter companies. We'll stick a link down in the description area that you can get access. We put together an emergency kit that you can look at. But this stuff, you can literally filter water out of lakes and stuff like that. Now, you need to read the instructions, contact the manufacturer, how to do it so you don't get sick. But you're talking about a high-grade thing. And people, I always hear, oh, man, if something crazy happens, I'm going to buy gold. Well, to me, as you saw with COVID-19, you had the situation where people are going to the store, they're taking stuff out of the store like crazy, with the food and the toilet paper, massive amounts of toilet paper, Clorox wipes, all that kind of stuff. And if we get to a situation where there's some kind of natural disaster or whatever it may be, the things people are going to need, you can't eat gold, right? I mean, gold could be nice from a currency standpoint, if there's something wrong with the United States dollar, but when it comes to surviving day to day, water, whether it's backup water in a tank, a jug, or the water filter, food, huge thing, security measures, protection, alternative energy sources. Another thing that you could have is this. There's a more recent one you can get, but this thing is a hand crank. You literally have no batteries anywhere in case your batteries run out. It connects to a solar panel type thing. Plus, you can just hand crank this, plug in your cell phone, and you can charge your cell phone up by just hand cranking things. The good old days. So, and it has a radio on it, all that kind of stuff. So this also you can take a look at in the kit that we have. Another thing people don't think of is they think about the toilet paper, right? But what happens if you have no water pressure because of a natural disaster or whatever, and you cannot flush your toilet? Well, you try to use the restroom, right? You got this going on. You got the emoji poo, and that starts filling up, and you can't flush it. Well, one thing you can do is you can fill up your bathtub, ton of water, and then you can take a bucket and you can help pour that down. So that's an idea. Or you can just get yourself one of those portable camping toilets. We have that in the link, too, that you can get access to. So have an emergency plan with your family, neighborhood, that type of thing in case something crazy happens. All right. Now we're going to move into the insurance section here. This probably is my number one recommendation outside of this emergency planning stuff. That rarity that's going to happen, that number one thing I was talking about, emergency. But if it does, You're prepared. But this really is the big one. Your biggest asset when you're just starting in your 20s, just graduated, 30s, 40s even 50s, is your ability, your body to be able to move around, your body, mind to be able to think and use that as a resource to produce income, a job, whatever it is, whether it's physical labor, manual labor, mental labor, whatever. If you don't have that, just think about that. If you're making, let's say, $80,000 a year, right? And you're driving down the street, somebody smacks you from behind or T-bones you, whatever it is, and it puts you out a commission where you literally cannot do anything. Hopefully you'll have qualified and can get some kind of disability through Social Security, the government, but that may not be the case. So you need to have disability insurance through your employer, or if you're self-employed, try to get it through an insurance company. We do that type of stuff. We can show you that. But first, try to go through your employer, get long-term disability. Because you take $80,000 a year, you multiply that for the next 40 years of working, if that's what you do. That's $3.2 million is what you're worth right there. And the more you make, the more you're worth, right? From the standpoint of producing equity, investments and savings and all that type of stuff. So that is very critical, is get disability insurance when you walk in the door that first day. Make sure you have it really before you walk in, before you get in that car or whatever it is. Make sure you're looking into that. Same thing with health insurance, right? If you become sick, you're trying to avoid a catastrophic situation. So there's high deductible plans you can get into, where it means you pay maybe up to $5,000 of the first cost, but then things are starting to be covered after that. Those are typically cheaper. You can get usually what's called a health savings account attached to that, where it's like an IRA. You can put money into it, can be tax deductible. And then when you pull it out for medical expenses, it's tax free. I think the amount you can put in there right now is about $3,500 single and $7,000 for a family. Don't hold me to that, but it's somewhere in that range. So that's a possibility. One thing that people don't know about, the little tip here, is if you have an IRA, you can actually do a one-time conversion for, I think it's that max amount per year. One time, move it to a health savings account, and then be able to take that money out tax-free as well. So that's a tip from dear old Bill here that you can do. So insurance is key. Everybody hates insurance, because it's the likelihood of it paying out is slim to none. But I think the stat I saw is 1 out of 4 adults in their 30s, somewhere in there, is a chance for disability. And that is not good. It can wreck your whole family situation and stuff very quickly if you don't have it. So try to insure as much as you can of your current income. And life insurance is another big one, even before you're married. Or maybe you're never going to get married, but say before you're married, before you have kids, while you're healthy, making sure you're getting some through your employer, but also think about getting one on yourself outside of your employer that you can take anywhere. Because sometimes when you go through a company plan and you change that company, you may not be able to port that insurance to another company or to yourself. It may cost more, where you can lock in a low term policy right now, say 20, 30 years. Term insurance means you're just buying that insurance set amount, paying a set amount for 20, 30 years, and then it's done, versus what's called permanent insurance, which can be more expensive. So I prefer term insurance for younger folks because of the cost effectiveness. Very cheap for that. So in case the reason is you get going here, you're working, you're single, then you get married. If you never had life insurance, all of a sudden you get sick. And maybe it's not where you don't pass away, but then it's a pretty decent medical problem. Then you try to go get insurance on yourself. Maybe your company doesn't offer it, but maybe they do. But if you try to go get it yourself, then maybe it's just astronomical and you can't do it, or you're not insurable. So you want to check into that. And I would suggest 10 to 12 times your income typically. Again, everybody's situation is different, but we want to look into that. So we mentioned life insurance, long-term care insurance. That's going to be if you can't do typically 2 out of these 6 activities of daily living, such as bathing, feeding yourself, transferring yourself, putting your clothes on, all that kind of stuff. Usually that is not invested in until you're probably in your 50s, but you can get it earlier than that. And help, again, it protects, if you're disabled, that type of stuff, even though you might have disability insurance, this can pay for costs for those type of things, which can range typically from $40,000 to $90,000 a year in cost, stuff like that. So instead of that disability income's coming in to help support your current lifestyle for the family, but if you got all these expenses going, turn around and paying back out, this long-term care insurance can offset that type of thing. So again, people hate insurance, but you got to make sure you have these basics in place. Long-term care is debatable, but definitely disability, some life insurance, that type of thing. All right. Next is estate planning. So your wills, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, a living will, that type of stuff. I'm not an attorney, so I would highly recommend you speak to an attorney about these, but just to give you some basic high-level overview, the wills, especially for a family with children or you're going to have children, you want to make sure that you name a guardian in your will, meaning if something happens to you, both of you, and you have children, not age of majority children, then if you don't have guardians named, then the state can determine who is going to take care of your children. And maybe it's one of those relatives that you just don't like for whatever reason. A sister you never got along with. I don't know. If you have the guardians named in the will, then that will help determine who's going to, watch or take care of the kids. The other thing the will does is anything that's not designated by beneficiary, a law that you've named a specific beneficiary to, all the other assets, you can have a will say any other assets that I don't have a named beneficiary, I want that will to say who it goes to. So that's another thing you do. And again, speak to an attorney on it. Another critical thing is power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and then financial power of attorney. Once you turn age of majority in your state, which is typically 18, you have to check your state. Even if you're living with your parents still, that if something happens to you where you end up in the hospital and you can't think for yourself, under HIPAA laws, your parents may not be able to get information on you, their child, in the hospital. But I would highly recommend you get the power of attorney, healthcare, and financial that will name your parents wherever you want. And this, if you're married, obviously you're going to name probably your spouse and then maybe a brother or sister after that or something like that. But you really want to make sure you get that done as well. That's a key thing. Living will is going to talk about end of life. Do I want to be resuscitated? Do I want all these stupid tubes in me? If it tells you your wishes if you wish to not be resuscitated and all that type of stuff. And there's more into that. Again, speak to an attorney on it. So that's the basics on your foundation, right? If you can get that foundation, preserve what you have. Now we start getting into more of the fun stuff, where you're starting to put your goals together. When do I want to retire? I want to buy a new house. I want to buy a new car. I want to help a charity, whatever it is. That's where we're starting to talk about this stuff now up here. And a key thing to this, and I've talked with estate planning, if you get hurt and all that, really pursuing a healthy lifestyle, keeping healthy, getting your checkups and all that kind of stuff, eating right, the best you can. And we want to enjoy life and have the fun things like the ice cream. I love ice cream. But all that kind of stuff. But, as you'll get older, you'll find that your health situation can impact a lot of costs. Potentially health insurance, the life insurance, gets into other things as well that will impact you, taking care of yourself, medical costs, all that kind of stuff can add up if you're not taking care of yourself. I know it's easy to say and hard to do sometimes, but just a reminder that can impact you financially as well down the road. And then budgeting, we'll talk about that here in a bit. And I talked about financial goals. Maybe you're going to start a business. There's a lot of young entrepreneurs out there starting a business. So now your computer that you're using, like this guy here, come back to my main shot. The computer, your phone, your office, all this stuff now starts to become tax deductible, potentially if you're running a business, all kind of stuff, mileage, on your cars, stuff like that. So that's a way to potentially lower your tax burden if you start a business, things like that. That gets into tax reductions, things you can do there. We'll talk about that. Debt management. That's a key thing, obviously, with you coming out of, if you're coming out of high school, college, or you have a new car, you've got your student loan debt, there's things you can do with that. And that video I did on that student loan debt cancellation would be a big one to look at, because I go into that. I don't want to go too much into that here, but there's ways you can refinance student loan debt, car loan debt, all that kind of stuff. But there's some nuances you have to be careful with when you do it. But take a look at that video. And then you're pursuing tactical growth investments, such as maybe it could be rental real estate. You can get into that. Stocks, mutual funds. I'm going to go over some stuff here in a little bit with that. But all kind of private equity type accounts, what's called special purpose acquisition companies, where they're trying to invest in a company pre-IPO. There's things out there. There's also what's called structured notes, where you can invest for growth, but you also can pursue downside protection tied to indexes such as the S&P 500. There's similar things with structured annuity type things, but they all have their pros, and then there's things you got to consider when you get into these doing that. But their goal there is to help you pursue growth better than sitting in cash and CDs and stuff like that long term. And you'll see coming up here what I mean, why that's important. Trying to get that extra 1% or so. And then eventually you're going to have to create income off your investments. Or if you don't have enough, you may have to work part-time doing things. And this FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. If they're retiring, they're 35, they're not going to have health insurance. They're going to have to go out and buy it if they're not working for a company anymore. Or you get the situation where you got the standpoint of, I've got this money now, but I got to make it last, 60 years potentially. Because if you think about life expectancy, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you had a situation where they were living probably and they were till their mid 40s, I think is the number, somewhere in there. And now we're in our 80s, right, is life expectancy. Can you imagine, 50 years from now, and you watching this today, you're going to be close to 70, or maybe you're 80 or whatever, but maybe life expectancy due to medical advances is all the way into your hundreds, 100, 110, something like that, because of just phenomenal medical advances, which I believe is going to happen. I think there's going to be some unbelievable things happen here. But I'm going to show you this. And this kind of leads in, we'll get into now the retirement planning, the budgeting for you folks. You can see this. Let me just pull out of this. But this is a lady. She's 96 years old. And this is the importance of planning long term. And I want to use this as another strategy you can do for retirement. And I call it admire. Instead of fire, it's admire. So you're always doing meaningful, inspirational, rewarding employment and for as long as you can. So it means if you like what you're doing, you may want to do it. And there's also studies that can show that the longer you work, especially if you like what you're doing, the more positive it is on your health, mind-wise, potentially body-wise, that type of thing. So if you want to live a long, full life, that could be potentially a strategy. Instead of, I got to make all this money and I got to have it by 60, or I got to have it by 50, I got to have it by 65. What if you have the approach where, maybe I'm working less and living more now, knowing that I'm going to work longer later because I really love what I'm doing. That's hard to think about now when you're in your 20s and 30s. But me in the 50s now, I mean, I plan on doing this as long as my brain is going. You know, Warren Buffett, I think he just turned, he's mid 80s or almost 90. I know his partner is in his 90s, Charlie Munger. So I plan on working as long as I can, and maybe someday you might become a client of mine. Hopefully I'll still be, maybe I'm strolling around or whatever, and I'm still giving you good ideas, hopefully, to help you pursue the lifestyle that you desire, right, and preserve it. So let's watch this lady. She's 96. She bowled a 300 no tap 300, which means you're knocking down 9 pins out of all 10 frames, which is insane. And just look at her energy. Look at her agility for 96. And I think this is going to be what a lot of you guys are going to be like because of medical advances. And right now she's obviously an anomaly, it's not typical. But look
7-year-old bowler on our 7:30 news, and we loved her so much we had to share her story.
Bambo.
Yeah, as Megan says,
look at her moving and jiving.
Feisty, fun, and she's great at bowling. So
feisty,
good,
fun.
She scored a no-tap 300.
Unbelievable,
all
right?
Strikes in a row.
So
and first for anyone.
I mean, just look at her.
Lanes and McKee's Rock.
Fun. When she talks, I'm not going to keep going on here, but she is just phenomenal. That could be you. Down the road here. So that's why you got to start planning. So let's look at this. Let's get into the client. I want to make sure I'm touching on everything. One thing I forgot to mention. If you're just getting out of high school and you're in college, I would highly recommend with your parents or whatever, get yourself a credit card. And I'm backing up here, but I forgot to mention this. Get yourself a credit card because you want to establish that credit. Maybe just spend a little bit each month or whatever, something easy, $10, $15, pay it off. And that way you're building credit. So we've done that for our daughters. Our older daughter's now been able to buy a house. So it's building that credit up, because if you don't have that and you want to buy a house when you're 23, 24, something like that, and you don't have good credit, you may not be able to get what you want, especially interest rates. The better credit you have typically allows you to get a lower interest rate. And a 1% difference on a loan over a 15, 30-year period is a big deal. I'll show you that just from a standpoint of projections of your assets. All right. Let me just check my notes here. I think I got that. Yes. All right. So let's get in here. The other section you want to go to, so we're in retirement. If you go to profile, this is where you'll be able to adjust all the numbers in here. Let me get myself out of the way here so you can see this a lot better. I'm going to cut this. All right. So inside of here, this is where you can go to your net worth. You can add your goals in here, your income numbers. This is all the different income numbers we've put in here, projected Social Security, salary for the husband and wife. And we changed different time frames, said she's not going to make as much from a certain point while she's watching the kids. This is where you can put in all your expenses. So you can, instead of that budget brainstorm worksheet, you can come in here and add your own expenses and get your own list in here. Any of these tabs you can click on. Let's just pick one here, like home insurance. I built home insurance in another part of this where you actually put the property in. But you can put that in here. You can put your car insurance, $150 a month. It lasts to the end of both plans in here as well. It starts calendar year 2020, and it goes throughout the entire life expectancy in here. And you can either inflate this or not, meaning the cost of that going up annually over a period of time. So you can do this with any of these tabs that you put in here and just change them around. Then here's where you put your family info. And if you go to that link I showed you earlier, which you can find on pursuefinancialfreedom.com, I'll put it in the link in the description too. This is where you'll start entering in all your own data, your date of birth, your sons, daughters, all that kind of stuff. Put that in here, your savings. This is where you're going to put in like how much you're putting into a 401k through a retirement plan at work, or your son's 529 plans, that type of stuff. You put all that in here. And then net worth, this is where you can either link an account. So if you want to link an account, you can pick where you're doing business, whether it's Fidelity or Bank of America, and you can link your bank accounts and your investment accounts all in here. It'll show up and automatically refresh every day as long as that link is live, and put it in here, even your 401ks and stuff, and you can monitor that here. So your plan is a constantly moving plan. As things change, you can see the updates immediately in here. Or you can just add a static account, and you put that in here, and you put the name in, like if it's an investment account. You come in here, put the name of it. If it's a taxable, it's a 529, which is for college savings. If it's an IRA, 401k, you put that all in here, and then who owns it, that type of thing. If you have cash, and then you can add holdings. But if you already have accounts, you can link it, which is the best way. It'll automatically pull your holdings in here. So that's that piece. So that's in here. And then down here is where I put the house. So you can see this, the property. So we got the value 225. I said it's going to inflate at 3% a year. It's held jointly. The insurance on this, about $100 a month, $1,200 to insure it. Again, these are just estimates. It could be different in your area. And the annual property tax, estimated about $3,200, almost $250 plus a month. That's another thing. When you buy a home, you're going to budget in. And this is why you can use this software. If you haven't bought a house yet, you can come in here. All right, what's my estimated property tax and my insurance? Plug it in so you can see what's going to happen to your plan. You can do that all in here. You can put your insurance in here, term life. All that stuff can go in here as well. So that's just a quick note on that. One thing I would say I don't like, instead of putting your cash account under bank, put it under investment here and title it as a taxable account. When you come in here, I'll show you one down here. Like I put this bucket one emergency money. Make it a taxable account. Put your cash here because it'll automatically include in some other parts of the plan versus just leaving it out here. So I like doing that. And then your goals, this is where you're going to set up here your retirement ages. I've got 67 for these guys. Retirement healthcare costs about $5,200 roughly a month, or not $5,200 a month. That would be insane. We'd be in trouble. $5,200 a year for both of them at retirement, and you have what's called Medicare premiums you'll pay, and then just the average deductibles you pay. They factor that in, and it'll probably be much higher when you reach that point. And this will automatically inflate that for you in the plan, so you can see what it looks like. And we've built in some areas here where you can purchase, upgrade a home, or downsize a home when you retire. And then we put the daughters and sons' college goals in here. $22,000 roughly right now for a public. So if you're just have a child, or you're getting ready to have a child, $22,000. That's a public school, room and board. And obviously with COVID-19, maybe that's cheaper now on the room and board. If you're not at school, you're doing virtually. But eventually it's probably going to be back to that, right? I definitely believe that. So that's building in here, and that will inflate all the way through your years, and that will go up. So by the time, 18 years from now, it's probably going to be more like $40,000. But the system automatically does this for you when you put it in here. And then business venture, if you want, I build in a business venture for this couple down the road if they want to buy a business and then sell it. So that's your goal section, your net worth section. And notice here, if you do itemized expenses under here, and you build all this stuff in where it lasts throughout until the end of both plans, you don't want to come under goals and put in retirement expenses here. Right now, you'll notice I have this 0 because you'll be duplicating things. So you want to make sure under expenses, if you want to itemize things, which I really like to do, I do it for ours, but some people don't. I just want to put a blanket number. Well, if you do put a just overall number, like under expenses, and you do pre-retirement living expenses, let me move out of the way. Instead of doing all the itemization, you can just add everything up and put it here and just have a general number, inflate that like at 3%, meaning the cost of you a cup of coffee going up, $3 or $4 now might be $8, in 17 years or whatever. Some of them are maybe $8 already. But you can just put in a blank number here, and then that's when you would under the goals section, want to put in the same retirement expenses right here as well to factor that in. But I like to nail it down and look at everything because it really allows you to move things around nicely, and I'll show you why. So if we go to the retirements tab, hang in with me. We're getting close to the end here because I want to show you again, how you can get some complimentary planning, and then also how you can get access to this software I'm showing you, and then I'm going to show you some growth ideas that maybe you haven't seen before out there. I want to show you that. So let's look at this. We went over the cash flows before, so now I want to come under comparison. So it's retirement, analysis, comparison. This is really cool. So this is where if you itemize all your expenses, you can adjust these things and see how it impacts your goal. So this scenario here, the blue-purple line is what's showing the new proposed plan after we've made some changes to the proposal. The blue plan was basically them only sitting in cash for the rest of their life, never investing, making about 1%. They tried to retire at 67. They put, let's see here, they did not do any part, like when one of the spouses stopped working when they had the kids, nobody did any extra income at all, no part-time income. So we increased that to $28,000. That was a big reason. The other thing is, as I mentioned, is only 1%. So by changing a few things, look at this. So they run out of money here about when they're 70 right here. If one of the spouses tries to just not work while they're raising the kids, no income whatsoever. They have the income of the spouse remaining, which would be about $85,000, $90,000 at the time. We run this all the way to 100. They try to retire at 67. The medical expenses I went over, they put the kids through college. And then the spouse, one of the spouses who was taking care of the kids, does come back and work after high school, basically, and make $60,000 a year until retirement. They're putting in 10% into their retirement funds, $1,000 into IRAs. They're putting money into 529 plans for their kids, college savings accounts. They're paying out some insurance, health insurance, their disability, like I talked about, the vision, car insurance, all this in here, gas, maintenance for your automobile. So this is where I talk about the detail orientation you can do and just show you. So this is their factor, and they're spending $250 a month on landscape. Well, maybe you buy a place that really is already done and you're not going to spend much. Maybe you're only going to spend, $100 a month. Let's just look at this. So that's going to save $150 a month. I'm just curious to see this. And we come down here and we hit the refresh button. It's actually up here a little bit. Hit this refresh button. So anytime you change something on the left side, let me point this out too. This is the proposed side. This is your current side. So anything that you enter in initially into the plan is your current. And no matter what you change on this proposed side, you will not screw up your base plan. So just remember that, which is very nice. So if I go in here and I change this and I hit refresh, let's see what this does. See if we get an extension out here some more. Look at that. Can you believe that? So I hope you take note of that. I literally saved an extra $150 a month. If I can somewhere in my budget track down $150 a month, if instead I can invest that money making 5.9%. And that's the other thing. I'm only using a growth rate of 5.9% here. And save that over all these years. Right now you're in your 20s. We're talking like 70 years worth of savings. Look at that. That's like 4.1 million more. Is that insane or what? That's the power why you have to budget. You have to look at this and try and see how you can figure things out. We don't want to give up current living, right? I mean, we want to have fun and all that, but try to be smart about it. Still doing your fun things, but try to do it more efficiently. Because that is just a huge difference. So the other thing I want to show, let me change that back to 250. Come down here. And this is, again, you can do all this. If you guys want access to the software, you can do it. and plan. So let's go back to one, or no, that's my car insurance. Sorry. Yeah, so you can find cheaper car insurance. You can see how that impacts it. Here it is. $250. And we're going to hit refresh. I want to show one other thing here with this. So watch this go back down. Bam. But let's say instead of 5.9%, they average 7.1. So I like to be conservative on projection. I'll see these projections that people put in place at 9, 10%. I think that's kind of outrageous. I'd rather be more conservative. I think for folks that are in their 20s and 30s, this 7% growth rate is probably reasonable. That 5.9 is getting really conservative. And if you want to get in depression type stuff, you can actually come in here and change this, like 4.3 average for your entire, life expectancy from now until you're 100 and see what it does. But I think this is pretty reasonable. But let's see. I changed this so if you can just average an extra 1.2% on your money, look what happens here. I'm going to hit refresh. Let's watch this build. See where this shows up. This is keeping your same landscaping, all your favorite flowers and putting in your mulch, and maybe it's raking your rocks out in Arizona. I don't know what. 16.5 million. Is that crazy or what? So that's the power of compounding interest, as Albert Einstein talks about, as also budgeting, trying to reduce your costs, but still living the way you want to live if you can in here. So other things you need to be aware of, and then I'm going to get into some of these growth ideas for you, and then we're going to let you go here because I know this is getting long. We're at 52 minutes. I don't want this to go over an hour. But I think it's important because all these things, when you're just starting out, you got to be aware of this. Down here, scrolling down, these are all these itemized expenses you can plop into here. So you got things you got to think about. I mentioned them: registration for your car, umbrella insurance. So this would be above and beyond your home and auto insurance coverage that could be attached to that. There's some other things you could possibly plan for that might not cover other liability issues you might want to think about with your house and stuff. You got house remodeling. I mean, typically, you buy a house, you're probably going to eventually have something go wrong, or maintenance-wise, a new roof. It could be a furnace goes out, a sump pump. Make sure if you got a basement in your area, make sure you have a sump pump, a backup sump pump, battery backup, because if that fills up, you're gone. You got a basement that's finished, you got a problem. Also, earthquake insurance. In the state of Ohio, just in the last, it's like 90 days, we've had like 4 tremors. People aren't aware of this, but we've had like 4 tremors in Ohio. It's a rare thing. It's one of those natural disaster crazy things, but typically with earthquake insurance, and again, this could be different from any plan, we have it. It's not that expensive if something crazy does happen, because there is a fault that runs, I think, in the Midwest around St. Louis area. Forget the exact name of it. But if we do have a big one sometime, that earthquake insurance, I think the deductible, it is high deductible, but with our property, at about $500,000, if there is a major quake, I think it covers the first, I have to go back and look at it, but after the first 70,000, you get coverage on it. So got to check your own policy, look it all out. But, $200,000 house, $300,000, $400,000, earthquake insurance could be good, even in the Midwest. So just talk to your insurance agent. So you're going to have repairs, right? So you got to budget that in. You just cannot factor that in. We factor in about $100 a month over your entire life expectancy, right? So long-term expenditures. If you have a pool, waters, sanitation, electric, you got to, groceries. If you have a pet, how much you spending on heartworm pills and flea and tick medicine, their checkups. If they have a problem, a surgery, how much you're going to dine out. We're spending $200 a month, we say. Entertainment, obviously that's a little less during COVID. Netflix. Hulu, YouTube TV, all that kind of stuff. What is the other thing? It's I can't think of it. But one of the radio things or the streaming things, Spotify. And if you have a golf or tennis club, or maybe your kids as they get into sports, you're going to have training for them. Maybe you're going to work and you have a daycare, a nanny or whatever. Your clothing, how much are you going to spend a month on clothing, the kids' clothes, cell phone bills, internet, computer repairs. You're not going to probably buy one computer. So we build all this in, lottery tickets if you buy that. And then travel, and that's probably the big thing, right? If you're going to travel wherever it may be, let me pull this up, see if I can play this. But if you're going to travel, eventually, I'm seeing a lot of things right now with the airlines. They're talking about these filters they've got in there that are a lot from, again, look at the research, check it out, but they're really dampening down potential spread of COVID within the airplane. So maybe we're getting back to traveling a lot more eventually here, which I think we will. And you want to go to places like this. Isn't that spectacular? The beaches and all that. How much do you want to spend? Maybe you want to buy a property on the beach like this. Whatever it may be. Eventually, I think we'll get back to cruises. You're going to take cruises. You got to factor all this in. We plan this out in here to build out the entire plan in there. So let me jump back out of this and get back into the real numbers in here. So cut to that. And here we go. So traveling. And then the really other big thing that you have to factor in besides college is, do you want to send your kids to private schools, from kindergarten or preschool, kindergarten through 8th grade, then maybe high school, private or public? In this scenario, we kept them private or public, because you can see there's zeros in here, but you can literally just change this. So let's do this. So when you start to invest in your retirement accounts, 401ks, stuff like that, there is what we call, I don't like the market time. So market timing to me is a fruitless effort. You can maybe try it once in a blue moon. There's some things going on right now that might warrant that. I've talked about that in some other podcasts with the election and stuff. But in general, this is a very interesting study. When you start investing your money, if this is from March of 2009, at the bottom of the financial crisis, the big mortgage crisis and everything in 2008-09, if all of a sudden you said, all right, I'm an investor, I'm scared to death, I don't want to invest anymore, in that time, you didn't know it was the bottom of the market, but you just went ahead and invested. If you would have just left that money in there and let it go until March 8th of 2019, and I've seen this study in all kinds of scenarios too, not just this one, you would average 17.5% of your money. So you don't listen to all the naysayers, the government's going to default, all this kind of stuff. You just kept your money in, you made 17.5. But if you try to do some timing, if you just missed the 10 best days in the market, then you would have had a growth rate of 12.1. If you missed the 20 best days, if you missed just 20 days out of these 10 years, you only averaged 8.6. You missed 30, you averaged 5.6%. Is that insane or what? So that's why we don't recommend the money that you're going to invest for long term. This is what we have our different buckets of money. You got bucket one money, which is money you're going to need basically in the next 1 to 2 years. That's safe CDs, savings, checkings, that type of stuff, your emergency money, right? We talked about. Bucket two money you might need within the next, 8 years or so. That's really going to be still more safe money. You don't want a lot of downside risk to that money. Then bucket 3 and 4 is when you're starting to invest for money that's 15 years and greater out there that you're not going to probably touch and that's going to be for retirement and stuff. So we get into what's called indexing, which is low-cost strategies, and I'll show you why. Both regular indexing, also protected growth indexing that you can look at as well. And then just what we call the bucket 4 treasure hunting bucket, where you're trying to beat the markets, the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones. So the S&P 500, the top 500 stocks from a market cap standpoint out there. That's kind of the barometer when you look at the news, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the 30 stocks, and then the S&P 500, a broader look at the U.S. market. And trying to beat that is very hard, and I'll show you this. So let me pull this up. This is amazing. So if you look at the top here, this is all domestic funds, 1,500 S&P composite, which takes into effect, it's the S&P mid-cap 400, so 400 stocks, more mid-sized companies. Then you got really small companies, 600, and the S&P 500 all together. You wrap all those into one. And you can see here what this statistic is showing is that the percentage of U.S. equity funds, like normal mutual funds, so you can either invest in stocks yourself, right? Buy your own stock like an Apple or a Google or an Amazon, whatever it is. And I'm not making a recommendation here, but you can pick those yourself. Or if you are not comfortable doing that, you can put it into a mutual fund where there's a professional money management and you're pooled in with other investors all in this one, and they pick the stocks and stuff for you out there. And I'll go over the differences in a little bit. And they'll manage things. They may buy and sell things periodically, different stocks in there for you. You don't have to worry about it. And they charge you a fee for it. And then there's an index, which is this thing here, this S&P 500, S&P Composite 1500, which is just a basket of stocks. There's really no active managing in there, and that's why it's low cost. But what this is saying is that 67.4% of the time in the past year, 70.5% over 3 years, 5 years, 80+%, 10 years, 84.49, and 15 years, 87.3% of the time that just owning an index like this beats an active money manager. So that's why we believe for a big chunk of people's portfolio in their stock side, their growth money, that bucket 3, 4 money, we want to invest just in indexing. It's low cost, saves internally a lot of money, and it's very hard because it's very hard to beat the markets. That's what I'm saying. Market is the S&P 500 and this type of thing here, S&P Composite 1500. So why not just buy the index? But then, there are the ability that there are managers out there that have historically beat the market. And we use that in our treasure hunting bucket where we're looking for high flyers that have beat the market, just to give you kind of an idea return-wise. Let me see if I've got this up still or not. See if I have it. Yeah, so these are I cannot disclose anything, but these are just some samples. If you want to find these out, give us a call when we do the planning. We can talk to you about some of this. But like year to date, 73%. Down here is where the S&P 500 is. These are the numbers down here. So, year to date, 14, 15 in here, and then 3, 5, 10. You can see all these guys up here have substantially outperformed the market, the S&P 500. So that is where we're looking, and there's no guarantee. These could go down like a rock, lose a ton of money, and you're not beating the index. So past performance, no guarantee of future performance. But these are the treasure hunting bucket type things that we're looking for to beat the broad market on that. So let me go back into this and here, pull this up. So, and here is the comparison. So mutual funds versus exchange traded funds. So this is what I was talking about before, just buying an index exchange traded fund. It's just a collection of security assets bundled together in a single basket. Here's the different styles, product comparison. Mutual funds are typically active, may generate above or below target benchmarks like we talked about. These are passive, meaning the index funds are not actively managed usually. Fund expenses are generally lower than mutual funds, but you can have some mutual funds despite their management fees. It could be 0.5%, 0.8%, 1%, 1.2%, as long as they're giving you value. On a consistent basis, like the ones that I was showing you, then then they could be worth it, right? On part of your portfolio. So that's sales charges, depending on you can buy these exchange funds in a brokerage account, usually no fee if you're doing like a discount situation. And then if you're doing a mutual fund, depending on who you're doing it through, they can be bought different fees or no fees and that type of stuff. Flexibility out there. I mean, the flexibility, I don't know why they're saying none here. I'm going to say that additional offer benefits, exchangeability. You can move in between them. You have to sell one to buy another here on this side, but it's similar to that. The other thing is tax efficiency. Usually and this only would apply on anything you're buying outside of an IRA or 401k. Because 401k, when you buy and sell something inside, you don't pay a capital gains tax. If you bought something at $50,000, sold it at $100 inside a 401k, you're not paying a tax on that gain right away. Eventually, you got to pay tax on it unless you bought it in a Roth IRA or Roth 401k. If you're in a non-IRA account, so non-IRA, non-401k, it's just in your name or your spouse's name. There's no tax deferral situation. When you sell something, there's capital gains taxes you have to pay on that gain from 50 to 100. Typically up to 20%, maybe a little bit more on that. But the tax efficiency, when they're saying about these exchange funds, they don't typically pay out a lot of dividends. There's not a lot of active selling, so you're not getting capital gain distributions sent out to you, and you're just holding on to them. Transparency of this too. I mean, you can see exactly what's in an exchange fund at all times. Mutual fund generally lags about 30 days. You can't really see what's in it, but they usually stay pretty similar. So that's that. And then lastly, here is some other investments maybe you haven't heard of that maybe you're not getting access to as you get started, or maybe you're already investing. Here's some things you can look at. And we call this protected growth investing, where you're trying to pursue growth with some downside protection, striving to get that backed by either individual companies like a bank or an insurance company in the form of a structured annuity. But these are structured notes. And the reason we look at this, we use, depending if it's suitable or not for different clients, is that this is a great example. Let me blow this up a little bit more. So this is a scenario where you go back to October of 2000 or March of 2000, where you're at the peak and you had a big drop in the market from 2000 to 02. You dropped 47%. Then it went back up 100. Oh, let me get myself off the board here so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is called, again, the topic here is win more by losing less. So this is the hypothetical idea of doing these protected growth type strategies. Again, none of these are absolutely guaranteed either. They're not FDIC insured, not backed by the government. It's backed by the claims paying ability of the companies doing it. But let's say the market, which it did, dropped 47, went up 120, dropped 55 again. Then it shot up 498% since the bottom. You're at 310. Well, this scenario over here, we're talking about getting half the up and half the down. So you only went down 24 because you had some type of protection in place, but then you're able to get 61 on the upside, lost 28, didn't lose 55. So you're losing about half, and you made 254. But look, you're still at essentially the same value with a lot less volatility. So that's what they're talking about. Because what is shown here on this next page, which is very interesting, is that depending on the amount of loss that you get, and Warren Buffett, I think one of his quotes, and I'm paraphrasing, is the best way to win is try not to lose anything. Protect what you have. But if you lose 20% of your money, so we have a bear market, which is considered 20% down from the peak. That's considered a bear market. In the news, you'll hear, "Oh, we're in a bear market." 20%. I mean, it typically happens once every 7 years. It's not like it's, a thing that's or happens once in a blue moon. It's fairly common, once every 7 years or so. Obviously, we just went through it here with COVID-19, but if you lose 20, it takes 25% gain to get back to even. If you lose 30, it takes 43% to get back to even. If you lose 40, it takes 67. If you lose 50, it takes 100% to get back up. So, and here's the further thing. So what we're trying to say is that even though you lose 50, you got to make 100 to get back, right? So In part of the portfolios, if appropriate, we look to utilize strategies, and I'll just draw on here. And they're called either structured notes or structured annuities, where if you have this scenario, you put in 100,000, and they can be maturities anywhere from 2 to 6 year terms, sometimes 7. Just depends on what you're looking at. There's different varieties of these. So you could have a situation where it goes up, and you could have a participation of the market to a certain point. Could be 100%, could be a little bit more. But then if the market goes down, you can actually, in some cases, make money all the way up to like 30% on the downside. So even if it's down 20, you made 20. But it goes below the 30, you're at risk. That's one hypothetical idea. And then there's some where you can literally, even after 1 or 2 years, you could maybe lock in a gain. So let's say you're up 10%, even though the market may be up 12 or something like that. Then you can lock in these gains. Again, this is all hypothetical, but just kind of give you an idea what is out there. There's these strategies you can look at. You can lock in that gain, say it's 6 months into in this case, contract or note. And most likely it's going to be a structured annuity where you can do this. Because structured notes, which are backed by banks, those are going to be a lot less liquid. You really want to they're going to have the mindset when you buy them, hold them to maturity on that. And then these notes, or the structured annuities, you can lock in after, say, 6 months in, and then wait for 6 months till the next anniversary and reinvest. That's your risk, is that the market continues to go up. At least you got a gain. You're protecting that. And then some of them will just have where you got what's called a buffer. So let me just erase this out so you can see this. So you put in 100, and let's say you got 20% downside buffer or protection, they call it. Again, backed by the claims paying ability, in this case, an insurance company. But then on the upside, you've got unlimited upsides over the next 3 to 6 years, whatever it may be. And then they cover the first 20%. And then anything beyond that, you're exposed to. So there's pros to these, but there's also considerations. Structured notes and structured annuities, for you guys that are younger, it's really going to be things you're probably going to hold long term. Like the structured annuities have surrender charges to them. In your case, you're probably going to be only investing in those in your IRAs, because you can't take money out till you're 59 and a half anyway. Whereas the structured notes you could possibly do outside of an IRA, but they're going to tie your money up most likely. You got to be careful with that. But again, if you contact us, we can go over the pros and cons. Some of these have fees, some of them don't. Some of them have surrender charges like I talked about. So there's a lot of things you got to consider, and they may or may not be appropriate for you on that. So let me see if there's anything else. I think that hold on a second. I got to show you how you can get access to your complimentary plans here. Let's see, I did that. Yes. All right. So let me pull this up and show you here. Let's see here. Here we go. All right. So this is how we can help you out. So if you like what you see on here, you want to get a complimentary financial consult, you'll see running down on the bottom is our phone number, and I'll show it here in a second too, 513-641-6307. You can email us. But you can also go to that pursuefinancialfreedom.com, click on complimentary plan, and start to click that link where you can enter in your data. That's actually building you that website I was showing you just a little bit ago that you can get access to. And then if you like that, after we talk or whatever, and you still want access to it, maybe you're a do-it-yourself person, but you want access to the software, it's just $8 a month. So we can set that up for you. You can have access to it. And then if you want at some point in the future, I need some financial guidance, or I want you to manage my money, or I want access to one of these unique investment strategies that we went over, then we can help you do that. And it depends on the amount under investment, how much the management fees are, or the fees to these unique strategy or these different strategies that we have that maybe you don't have access to. They're not shouldn't say they're unique because you can potentially find them elsewhere, but just investment strategies that maybe you haven't seen before that we're bringing to your attention. And then at the end, if there's a product or a service you have out there, if you start a company or something like that, if we can get it approved, we can actually have you come on this podcast and share it with our audience. Can't, back it or anything, but at least share your story. It'd be neat to show what you're doing and that type of stuff and what you're trying to do to succeed. Really sharing inspirational stories there too and learning capabilities. So here are the numbers you can get a hold of us again at. Here's the text, 657-0989, the email. Take a screenshot of that. There's the website. My question to you, question of the day, what are you doing for your planning, just getting started here in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever? Drop a comment down if there's any other. I'd love to hear if there's any other softwares and stuff out there that you guys like, because I'm always looking for new ideas. I'm striving to bring you, my clients, better ideas as we go along. So with that being said, keep believing in yourself out there. Keep believing in, hope, the human race, the ability to innovate, the ability to adapt, and really just keep believing. As we know, with God, anything is possible. And I wish you a blessed rest of your week. And thanks for joining on, and hope I see you in the next video. Thank you very much.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight.